On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder pulling off a gritty comeback over the Memphis Grizzlies as SGA closes it out and Ajay Mitchell continues to shine.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcasting network there is, where it's your teams every day. I'm your host, media member, and beat writer for ThunderOnSI.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving into the end of this road trip for OKC, where they get a comeback win over the Memphis Grizzlies. Ajay Mitchell takes over that second half. SGA closes out the game, and Hartenstein and Holmgren continue to impress. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Go download that Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. You everydayers make this show work, so thank you so much. For those of you that listen every single morning, every single day, we're here for you, talking Thunder basketball Monday through Friday after every single game as well, and our live streams throughout the week that you do not want to miss, starting Monday at 2 p.m. Central Time with Derek Parker today. Now, let's dive into this game for Oklahoma City. Once again, there was no J-Dub, who's missed the entire season to this point. No Lou Dort, no Aaron Wiggins, no Topic, no Kenrich. It's the end of a 4-game road trip for Oklahoma City, which included a back-to-back, which included travel to L.A., up to Portland, back to Sacramento, over to Memphis, and finally ends with this cross-country game, earlier tip-off at 5 p.m. Central as a shorthanded Thunder team takes on Memphis. And, you cannot forget the depth that this team is missing. While they are the deepest, most talented team in the NBA, the optionality just is limited with this growing injury report. I mean, the energy levels in defense that Dort and J-Dub provide is off the charts. J-Dub being your number 2 scoring option. Aaron Wiggins being out is your third best bucket getter, both as a play finisher and a creator for himself. And you just cannot replicate that. Those are big pieces for this team. Even Kenrich Williams, he allows you to soak up some minutes as you're playing this taxing stretch. He would let you play small ball. He would let you play Chet at the 5, and he would just let you take some opportunities off the table for some of these guys who need a break, obviously, as the Thunder play the most games in the NBA to this point. And so, you're missing a lot. And to continue to find ways to win these games is impressive for Oklahoma City, even though they were expected to be this good. They were expected to be this good whenever you looked at the totality of their roster, which they have not had all season long, missing all the games from J-Dub, Topic, and Kenrich so far, missing significant games and multiple games from Dort, from Caruso, from Wiggins, from Chet, and yet they still find a way to sit here at 10-1. It's very impressive. When you look at this game, it shows you their continued grit, their continued toughness, because honestly, the Thunder come out of the gates with poor energy overall. They were not up to par on the defensive end, even with those qualifiers of who all is out. They did not play to their standard on that end of the floor in the first half. They missed open shots. They didn't, in the first quarter especially, really attacked the paint to the degree that they should have against the worst paint defense in the NBA. And the mini run at the end of the second quarter to make this an 11-point game at the break, it ends up paying dividends when you make this comeback, but it was still significant in that moment to where all of the bad feelings, and if you go back on social media, you can see people's live thoughts to these games. They were all trending negative at the first half, and yet you sat at intermission only down 11 points. And from there, the Thunder do what they do. They go on this magnificent third quarter run, which is 34-18 in their favor to win that frame. Memphis, being that worst paint defense in the NBA, gets attacked relentlessly, especially in the restricted area, and eventually the Thunder pull out this win. The Thunder are able to erase this massive lead from Memphis, which eventually got up to 19 points, and they were able to get the win with their 14th straight win over Memphis. I thought that this was a really great game from OKC, who eventually grew a 16-point lead of their own, despite this game getting into official clutch time, where it's under 5 minutes to go in a 5-point game. It ends with a 14-point victory for OKC in a game in which both sides are emptying their bench. They can just flip this switch so effortlessly at times, it feels like, of just surrender cobraing teams and squeezing the life out of them, that even if you have a first half where you feel pretty good about yourself, every little miscue ends up costing you. The fact that you let your lead go from 19 down to 11 ends up costing you. Still a double-digit point lead, still in a great spot against the best team in basketball. But that tiny little misstep leads to that avalanche in the fourth quarter where the Thunder are able to endure 4 lead changes, 7 ties, and they were only a -1 on the glass on a night where the effort on the glass could have been better. The Thunder forced 14 turnovers and only give it away 6 times. They dominate in the paint as expected at the end, 56-32 overall. They actually lose second chance points by 2 points, and they narrowly win fast break points by 1 point. But ultimately, it was their defense that allowed them to erase this deficit and get this win in Memphis, because the Thunder didn't shoot the ball particularly well. 43% from the floor, 23% from deep. And if they were not able to attack Memphis's paint defense, I don't know where they'd be right now after this game. But 84% at the charity stripe for OKC. Meanwhile, Memphis shoots 38% from the floor, 38% from three, and 72% at the charity stripe. Memphis did dominate bench points, and this was something that the Thunder struggled with in this game. Isaiah Joe was your best scorer off the bench, and he didn't crack double figures. Jay Will was labored. We'll talk about Jay Will a lot at the end of this show. He was not there tonight offensively, going 0 for 5. And like we mentioned before, whenever you take away all these little pieces, it shuffles roles. It changes how you can manage your bench, particularly as a bench scores and complementary scores with Aaron Wiggins, who's gotten some spot starts this season prior to his injury. But OKC wins points off turnovers 17-9, and they just keep grinding and keep finding these ways to create wins for themselves. I guess Ja Morant hasn't figured out anything except for how to stay on the court and still blow a big lead to OKC as the Thunder win their 14th straight over Memphis. This 11-point deficit, by the way, was the largest deficit that Oklahoma City has faced in Memphis in the regular season since that historic loss where the Thunder had to taste their own blood, as Mark would say. A lot went right, a lot went wrong for this team. We're going to dive into both those things, but ultimately it was SGA and Ajay Mitchell and the double bigs who stole the show tonight. But I will say, the officials on both sides, nobody walks away from this game happy. And that was a sticking point. I think that the Thunder handled that adversity of the officials a little bit better than Memphis did. Memphis had more frustration. Memphis let that get them more out of their element. And there's good reason for that, because the officials on both ends of the floor were poor. And they were poor in the sense of their lack of consistency. There were small stretches of this game where you could play uber physical. There were more stretches of this game where you could play ticky-tack and they'd call everything. So you never really got to see either team get into a flow state of how to execute tonight. And that is all on the officials. And it took away from what was a fun game, a fun back and forth game in Memphis. But ultimately the Thunder's defense, making Memphis get out of that comfortable first quarter and end up shooting the ball this poorly is a big deal. The Thunder protecting the ball was a big deal, and the Thunder getting this win to go 10-1 and in this road trip, which again, as we laid out at the top of the show, very tough, even if they were healthy, to manage, but to manage it and come out on the other side of it 10-1 is so impressive for this Thunder team. I thought that Ajay Mitchell's second half was really good. I thought that SGA took over this game in the fourth quarter, and that's after he had a 13-point third quarter. And so we're going to talk about all that coming up on today's show. But first, I want to say right now, put your friends over at Robinhood. Go check out Robinhood today, because Robinhood is incredible. Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. You play for the win, not just on game day, but every day. You're looking for every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channeling that drive into your money is good, and that's where Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from your desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, so start expecting more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move at Robinhood. Also want to say right now, but good friends over at Game Time, folks, the Thunder finally back in town, and nothing beats being in the arena for these opening games of the NBA season. The Thunder have not played a ton of home games, so you can still get your first look at this team. Let's be real, though. Nothing is more of a headache at times than trying to get tickets between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices jumping right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is go cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in. It's the app that provides fans the advantage, the ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Go check them out today because their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section you want, Game Time picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find NBA tickets for under $25. Go to Game Time today because I love the fact that they have no hidden fees. The price you see is the exact price you pay. And that's how you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Go download that Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go at Game Time. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. We're here talking about Ajay Mitchell's third quarter and second half overall. Look, I thought that this was a game that Ajay had to respond because in the first half, for the first time really in his career, but in particularly this season, you saw him get a little bit sped up. You saw him be a little bit out of sorts. You think back to that inbound steal he had, and he just bulldozes his way to the rim and flings up a shot that had no chance of going in and kind of ruins the opportunity for OKC to continue to claw back. Whereas previously, you've seen him be more under control and maybe take a Nash dribble out to the corner and wait on the cavalry to come and wait for the half-court offense to get set. He was just kind of out of sorts at times. The miscommunication between him and Caruso for that turnover was big. And so it felt like he was a little bit too sped up in the first half. The second half, everything was back to normal. And that takes a level of maturity. That takes a level of self-diagnosis on the fly that a lot of young players do not have and some players never receive in their NBA careers. So that is worth noting for AJ because we're going to talk a lot positively about his second half for good reason. He felt so in control of this game after intermission, both as a playmaker and as a scorer to close out this game for the Thunder. He had a great cut to the rim where he keeps himself alive as an off-ball player, and that unties the game to give the Thunder a lead in the fourth quarter as Caruso sets him up on the bounce pass. He was relentless downhill against Memphis' bad defense, which highlighted just how bad Memphis was in the paint tonight. And I thought that the biggest part of all this was two things. First and foremost, the most important thing is something that I don't think if I told you this fact just 4 weeks ago, you would have believed. But Ajay Mitchell has taken ownership of the fourth quarter. He's taken ownership of being the Jalen Williams for this team. Jalen Williams, the number 2 scoring option, who has constantly been praised for good reason for stretching out leads or cutting deficits to start the second quarter, to start the fourth quarter while Shai's on the bench, to allow Shai to walk into an opportunity where Shai can then close out those quarters and close out the game and get this team wins. And if I told you 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, that you'd be down J-Dub the entire first 11 games, and yet you would still be putting Shai in position to win games at the end because Ajay Mitchell is such a force as a scorer, and Ajay Mitchell is such a force as an overall player, I think that you would look at me like I had 3 heads. Like, okay, you're just like high on your own supply with your bold predictions of Ajay Mitchell whenever I predicted that he'd be a top 8 player on this roster. But that's the truth. He's really taken ownership of this team in those spots. And it lets Shai walk into a game in which they're up by 3 when he returns. And you think about that, the difference of Shai walking into this game with a lead versus being down 6, 7, 8. It makes all the difference in the world. And that's where you saw whenever J-Dub first came onto the scene, how valuable he was. And now you're seeing AJ start to replicate that. And the reason that I'm buying so much into the production of AJ early on this season, why I believe it's not a flash in the pan, why I believe that it's not going to go away once this team gets healthy and his role does change, is because he's plays so fluidly off of a guy like Shai. Like you look at the fourth quarter where Shai is setting a guard-to-guard screen for AJ Mitchell. AJ Mitchell comes off that screen, gets to the elbow, rises up over Conchar, and takes the lead for this team. He can do that next to J-Dub, and now you're surrounding him with the opportunity to score the basketball off of a high gravity player like Shai or J-Dub in all of his minutes and utilize them as a safety valve and a safety net for his playmaking opportunities. That's going to make AJ Mitchell the smart guy pick for Sixth Man of the Year. That's going to get AJ Mitchell a lot of votes in this category because of not only how he's carrying this team right now in a pinch, but also how his efficiency will only grow and his production will maintain as J-Dub returns to this roster. But you have to give him credit right now for being someone who in these fourth quarters allows you to either tread water or, more often than not, either cut the deficit or grow a lead for Shai to walk back into. And that is a massive difference from last year, because how often did we talk about in those games that J-Dub missed last year? They just don't have anyone who can stop the bleeding in the start of the fourth quarter, and it's now it now is on Shai to play hero ball whenever he comes back in. And this has been a trend throughout Shai's career at times when you've missed a guy like J-Dub. And AJ solving that is big in the start of the season for the Thunder. I also love the fact that he's already developing counter moves. Like you're seeing against Memphis, especially tonight, where Memphis is already cognitive of like their deficiencies in the paint. They're already focusing on that in general. But with AJ Mitchell, it was different. When they saw him get into the paint, everyone kind of swarmed him. Everybody collapsed onto him. And it let him go to that counter punch of these dump off passes. He had one where he's slicing through the lane, stops on the dime, turns around on his pivot foot and shovels it to Isaiah Hartenstein on the opposite block for a floater and for 2 easy points. He had one where he gets up into the air and he's now surrounded by 3 Memphis Grizzlies and dumps it up over them to Hartenstein, who ends up missing it, but is still a right read for AJ Mitchell and a right play for AJ Mitchell. And you're seeing how he's understanding the game. He's understanding that one thing leads to another. And just because you're awesome at getting to the rim, and more often than not awesome at getting foul calls, and thus it's kind of a 2-for-1 opportunity there where you're either going to score at the rim or you're going to get fouled, he's understanding that the third option of playmaking is just as important, and he's executing that at a very high level. So I love what we've seen overall from AJ Mitchell, and I love what we saw in the second half from AJ Mitchell. 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 for 3 from 3, 53% from the floor, 3 for 4 from the charity stripe for AJ Mitchell in this game. And then SGA, we talked about it, him being able to close out these games because of what AJ can do. Well, he was big in his own right. This is a 63rd straight game of 20-plus points. This is a streak that we've hardly seen in NBA history. He's with Wilt in these conversations, and anytime you're compared to Wilt Chamberlain, you're doing something right, and SGA clearly is. He returns to a 3-point lead because of the work that SGA puts in. Now, overall, let's talk about Shai just getting to 35 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, 3 for 9 from 3, 50% from the floor, and being a plus 28 in this game. Plus 28 in this game. He just continues to figure out how to attack teams and how to analyze what they're doing to him and correct it on the fly. After just one substitution pattern, he can figure it out and become who you expect him to be. He was relentless at getting to the rim. He was able to get to his spots in the mid-range very well. And again, that 13 points in the third quarter turned this game on a dime, because we talked about how important winning that third quarter was for this team. But SGA was special. His lack of turnovers, though, is my biggest compliment of SGA. We always look for new ways to praise Shai, and at some point, it just gets to be business as usual for Shai. And that's crazy to say, because he's putting up 35 points on 50% shooting, but that's kind of like a ho-hum night for him. That's kind of just what you expect from him. But the lack of turnovers is a big development for him, and it's been going on for the last 3 seasons. But what makes this stretch of 11 games so impressive is that if you take this stretch and go throughout the course of an 82-game season, 1.8 turnovers per game would be his second lowest rate, and this is his highest usage rate. And all eyes are on him. There's no one else that commands the respect even close to SGA, and they're sending late doubles, and they're watching him, shadowing him down the floor for 94 feet, and they're putting him in traffic in the paint, and they're swiping at him whenever he drives, and they're heavy in the gaps against him, and yet still he does not turn this ball over. And again, this is a trend that spans a couple of seasons, but in those couple of seasons, you could say, well, look at the players around them. Look at the fact that J-Dub takes some pressure off of them. Look at the fact that Chet in his rookie season takes some pressure off of him. Look at the fact that iHeart rolling to the rim takes some pressure off of him. Right now, everything is on Shai. His usage rate is spectacular, and he's still not turning it over. That's what separates him, along with the efficiency. So you don't have a guy who is efficient handling the ball, is efficient scoring the ball, has improved as a playmaker, and just led the league in scoring last year and is continuing to dominate as a scorer. Like this guy, do not take this guy for granted with all that he's able to do and supply for this team. But I do think that it's important to note two different shots before we get into his 9-point flurry. We've been talking a lot on this show about like the process or the results of these 3-point shots as the Thunder have struggled to shoot from three. And on Shai in particular, a lot of people have had questions about his early season shot diet from three. And I've been someone who's been defending his ability to take threes because they've came at opportune times for him. And because like they were the right decision, they were the right shot. Had it gone in, we'd be dancing in the streets. It didn't go in. And so now we're mad that he took a three. This was a game that shows that example perfectly of it's more than just make or miss for Shai in particular, because you grade Shai's shot making, you grade Shai's shot selection and decision making on a different curve because of how good he is. So that step back three that he took initially on Cedric Howard, that was a bad shot from Shai. It just was. Like that step back three that he missed, the decision in that spot to not attack the rookie, to not attack the worst paint defense in the league in a close game late with the shot clock on your side, and then Memphis comes down and scores to officially put this game into clutch time, and OKC needs to call a timeout. That is a bad decision from Shai. Whether he would have made that shot or missed that shot, that's a bad decision. It's not a good process for SGA. However, out of that timeout, he makes a step back three over Jalen Williams. And beyond just making it, even if he would have missed that shot, it would have been a good process because SGA out of that timeout receives two different secondary passes where he's the third guy to touch it. The shot clock is already dwindling. And because that shot clock is dwindling, Jalen Williams is already retreating to the paint, expecting a late shot clock drive from SGA, who sets him up with one step to get Wells even further into the paint. And then pulls that step back three. That one went in. That one gets an ovation. That one doesn't need any justification. But there's the difference in the two decisions in terms of when to pull out that step back three, that even if that shot against Jalen Wells would have missed, I would have still been okay with that shot and graded that shot out as a good decision for SGA. And the reason, again, why that first shot, even if it would have been a made shot, wasn't a good decision was because the next possession, he comes right down the floor after hitting another three. So he goes back-to-back threes, then comes down the floor and drives in on Cedric Howard, gets an and one on the rookie, and has a flurry of 9 straight points to grow a 10-point lead for this team in a minute of basketball after scoring 13 in the third quarter. Like Shai is just able to take over these games and close out these games to the levels of which no one else in the NBA really can. Very few in the NBA really can. SGA was great tonight. The Thunder got this win tonight. Coming up, let's talk the big men because 2 of the 3 really good. One of them, not so much. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today because FanDuel is incredible, folks. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to write out that hot hand, or want to say, hey, you know what? I missed the start of the game, but the Thunder are trailing by 19 points in this game, and I believe that they're going to make a comeback against the Grizzlies. You can throw some shekels on a live bet, and if you combine those same game parlays in the live bets, you get a bigger opportunity for payouts. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up today. FanDuel.com, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And again, if you're a new customer, your first $5 bet, if it wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Like, for example, you have the Cavs and Heat. Cavs 8-point favorites on the road in Miami. Go check that out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day, the number one podcasting network for sports there is. So I really appreciate all of you everydayers listening every single morning, every single day, and making this show go. Chet Holmgren deserves a ton of flowers tonight because he got that turnaround jumper going in the mid-range. I will note he took a hard foul on Jaren Jackson Jr., and this was a situation where it plays into that decision-making. In a game in which Chet has the mid-range shot working, I would have liked to see Chet just take the wide-open mid-range jumper because he got the ball thrown to him about a step inside the three-point line, and he had the decision to, you could try to take a dribble back and have a step-back three, you could just launch the mid-range jumper, or you could go attack the rim. He elects to attack Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. does foul him. He takes a hard fall. That's kind of putting yourself in harm's way to a degree, especially on a night where your mid-range shot's going, where I would have rather him just take the mid-range jumper. But to his credit, he takes that hard fall, knocks down the free throws, and it's all fine. But he was more comfortable taking off the dribble jumpers this whole road trip when he did play. That was worth noting. They just didn't fall tonight, 1 for 4 from 3. But yet he still got the 21 points because this season, he looks different in seeking out mismatches. The Thunder do a great job of having more motion this season in their offense and allowing Chet to screen on and off the ball to where you're seeing him get these guards on him like a Ja Morant and seal them off and wait for the pass to come into the paint and then hit a turnaround fall-away jumper. And he did that routinely tonight to the point where Ja Morant grew so frustrated that whenever Chet sealed him inside the restricted area, inside the deep paint, and they threw the ball to Chet, Ja Morant just had nothing to do except for give a frustration foul to send Chet to the line going 2 for 2 to ice that game. But he played the role of a big man tonight. And that's a development that's really good for this team, where he's seeking mismatches in the mid-range, where he's diving to the rim as a roller, where he's cutting to the basket off of iHeart post-ups, where iHeart finds him on these lobs. It's been great to see that even in a night where he doesn't have that three-point shooting success, he can still get to 21 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal, because the three-point shooting success for him, whether he is 3 for 4 or whether he's 1 for 4, defenses still treat him as a significant threat. They still run him off the line. They still respect him to fly out to him when the ball gets thrown to him. They still respect him to be within a step of him off the ball. So, like, you're still earning the gravity and the benefits of your half-court offense from Chet being a three-point shooter, while also still getting the point production because he's so much improved in the mid-range and more comfortable taking the mid-range jumpers. Because he's always been a good player. Like, you always felt good when he took one dribble in, knocked down a mid-range jumper before, but he just feels more comfortable and more willing to take those mid-range jumpers. So great job play finishing tonight from Chet at plus 14 on his end. Isaiah Hartenstein keeps doing the dirty work, man. I mean, he got a couple buckets early on and remains aggressive with the ball in his hands and remains confident in that push shot, which is working for him even off the bounce, and you love to see that. And he totals 18 points, 13 rebounds, another double-double for him, 2 assists, a block, 72% from the floor, and 2 for 4 at the line, and a plus 8 in this game. But even that tip-in on Jaren Jackson Jr., I want to highlight that play in particular because it goes to point out how the maturity of iHeart shines through and how beneficial it is to have guys who are a little bit older like iHeart is and has been around the block and has learned some of these lessons, and it can get other young players up to speed, like a Chet Holmgren, for example, because iHeart gets the worst call on its ticky-tack call that should have gone against Kaysen, but ultimately goes against iHeart, and iHeart now has 5 fouls to work with. And like we mentioned, the refs for both sides were not great in the sense of consistency, in the sense of letting players know, well, where exactly is the line of a foul? And so instead of shying away, instead of him being someone who let the 5 fouls dictate his aggression level, he just kept playing his basketball and forced the officials to blow the whistle. And more often than not, the officials do not want to foul you out. And so he didn't foul out tonight. But that tipping over Jaren Jackson Jr., had he been overthinking it, and had he been thinking too much of like, oh, I got 5 fouls, you don't put yourself in harm's way like that. That could have, under these pretenses of what the officials have called, that could have been an offensive foul call. It also could have been a foul call on Jaren Jackson Jr. They end up just letting it play out, and you put yourself in the spot to make the play and let the decision lie with the zebras. And I thought that was a great job by iHeart to stay in the fight and to stay aggressive even with his fouls throughout the night. And so iHeart gets rewarded for it with another double-double. Kaysen Wallace, sneakily, good offensive rebounder for this team, and utilizes that with his playmaking ability to read the floor and get OKC in a position to capitalize on second chances. He had a nice spin away dribble move from Ja, takes contact on the drive from Ja, and gets the and one. But ultimately, a more quiet night from him. 6 points, 1 assist, 4 boards, 2 steals, and 1 for 7 from 3. But I thought that Isaiah Joe deserves a little bit of credit here, because if you look at the box score, it's a very tame night from Isaiah Joe. but only 3 made shots for him, 8 points total. That was the most off the Thunder's bench, but the 2 triples he hit were big in making this a game within striking distance for OKC. So I do think that Isaiah Joe deserves credit. Now let's talk Jay Will. Jay Will's shooting woes continue. He is missing at a high clip. And everyone knows he needs to start making them. Yeah, we get it. He needs to start making his threes. The good news is he's missing most of them long. And so there's a consistency with his misses. And that is easier to adjust to than if you were missing some shots long, some shots short, off the side iron. Like if you were more sporadic with how you were missing, it's harder to zero in on what's the problem, in my opinion. Whereas if you're missing them all long like he is, it should theoretically be a faster adjustment for him. The bad news is he's now hesitating a little bit too much, and you do not want this to be a trend that continues. Because while he's shooting the ball poorly, like the hesitation and the, I don't want to say loss of confidence because I don't know that that's true, but hesitation oftentimes couples with a loss of confidence. That's a bad thing because if you remember Jay Will as a prospect, he didn't shoot the ball at all. And nobody was considering him as a three-point threat. But he waltzes into training camp as a rookie, and he starts launching these threes in training camp. And Mark was impressed. And Mark's talking to the scouts and talking to his assistant coaches of like, what's this? Like since when could he shoot? And they let him, keep that confidence up by letting him shoot in the NBA, and the rest is history. You now have this body of work where he's a 37% career three-point shooter. He shot 40% last year, and he's just able to confidently step in and make these open catch and shoot threes. And so if that confidence starts to waver and the shot again continues to miss long, well, now what is your backbone of your success? What is your backbone of your portfolio as a shooter? Because the confidence had been the big thing for him. But I do believe that it's still not time to panic for Jay Will. Was this a game for him even beyond the shot making? Because at a certain degree, it's a make or miss league. Like, no, this was not a game for him. Like, he was not active on the glass. He did not do a great job of chasing long caroms off the rim. He did not do a good job of putting bodies on guys. He did a lot of watching defensively. Like, this was a lapse. And I think that he let the 0 for 5 bleed into his defense, which has not been a trend for him all season long. It's been a trend for him in this game where he let it linger on both ends, it felt like, and he's got to correct that, and he's got to kind of separate church and state, of separate missing your threes and still being an improved defender, which if you take the good from his season, he has looked better on the defensive end than in the past, but he's got to separate that and continue to at least stay improved defensively and not let these misses for him impact that end of the floor. So it was a forgettable night for Jay Will, but I found it to be admirable that Mark continued to stick with him, because there's so much that factors into this. Number one, it's still an extremely small sample size. And if you've been following the show, if you've been following this Thunder team, Mark doesn't do anything on small sample sizes. Like, he is the ultimate steady guy, and that's great as a head coach. But also, we talk about his hesitation. It's a good just mental side of things. It's a good just kind of softer reminder of like, hey, this team still believes in you. They're not going to yank you off the floor because you went 0 for 5 tonight. And the only other thing I'd say, for the people who believe that Jay Will should drive more, this is such a basic way of thinking, and it's such a wrong way of thinking about basketball, and this simpleton mindset of Jay Will cannot drive the ball more. Now, Shai taking that step back over Cedric Howard, yeah, Shai can drive more, because Shai, the defense is up against him. He's a prolific driver. He's a prolific guy at creating for himself and creating separation. Like, he gets his money made in the paint. With Jay Will, he's receiving the basketball with his defender 5 steps into the paint. He's not an out of this world athlete that can get a running start on a set defense and plow his way to the rim. And you'd much rather him launch a 3 than take one dribble in and take a long 2 to make your mind happy, because at least on the box score, it doesn't say he shot a 3, when in all intents and purposes, a long 2 is just a 3 that is not worth as much. Like, this guy has to keep shooting. There is no path for him to drive. The defenses are set up and gearing up for him as a wave-off guy, as they have, folks, even whenever he was a 40% three-point shooter. Like, even last year, when he shot 40%, he couldn't drive because defenses did not pay him any mind or matter about his three-point shot. So there is no opportunity for him to get other shots other than a 3. And you do not want to see him try to drive into the paint. You want to see him either take the open 3 or utilize his playmaking to set others up as a high post playmaking hub that he is. And he has to continue to do that, and he has to continue to hope that these shots eventually fall. But we always just go to this like, well, you got to drive. If you can't shoot, you got to drive. Drive where, folks? Drive where? The car's out of gas. It's 5 o'clock traffic on I-40. Drive where? Where do you want him to go? It's just not the answer. Like, the answer is make the adjustment and figure out your shot. And I think that he will. I still believe in Jay Will's 3-point shot making, but that's something that, of course, we have to monitor the rest of the season. This was a nice end to the road trip for OKC, especially record-wise, and especially now sitting at 10-1. The kind of interesting part of this upcoming week is that you've got to gut through another back-to-back. If you can make it, if this team can make it through the other side of this back-to-back that has Golden State and LA in the Paycom Center on Tuesday and Wednesday, well, then they can take a sigh of relief. Because then you have 2 straight off days, and then you go play Charlotte, and then you go play New Orleans. And then you get another off day, and then you play Sacramento. And then you get another off day, and another off day, and then you play Utah. Like, if you can just get through this back-to-back, for as much as the days are stacking up, the minutes are stacking up, and it's all compounding on this team, if they can just get through this back-to-back, they can take a sigh of relief, whether they're shorthanded or not, and be able to regroup. But they've got to make it through this back-to-back against Golden State and LA. It'll be a lot of fun. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about SGA's mindset. He had an interesting quote against Sacramento about last year's championship, and Justin Martinez was there to get that quote. Let's hear from Justin. Let's hear from Shai on his mindset heading into this season after a championship that he felt wasn't good enough. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show with Justin Martinez. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder anywhere you get your podcast from. And until next time, folks, be good and be good to one another.